سلام و وقتتان خوش. به گفتگوی ویژه امشبم خوش آمدین. مصاحبه اختصاصی داریم با آقای ایاد امین مدنی، دبیر کل سازمان همکاری های کشورهای اسلامی. Thank you so much for giving chance, Excellency Secretary General.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm also glad to see you. Let's have the first question from the goal of and the main goal of your trip to Afghanistan. What are the gist and the goal and the bullet point of your trip to Afghanistan?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى الرسل أجمعين. You know, as the Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC, the Secretary General must make frequent visits to the member states. Afghanistan, of course, is an important member state. We've been wanting to come here for some time, but everybody was busy with the elections and the post-elections. But now that there is a national unity government, it was a good opportunity, good timing for me to come to offer our congratulations to the newly elected officials, His Excellency President Ashraf Ghani and His Excellency CEO Dr. Abdullah and all other officials, and also to listen to them, to see what their vision is for the OIC, how they see the priorities of the OIC in the time to come.
So it's an official trip? Can you call
Yes, it is an official trip, yes.
Okay.
And we're very thankful for all the hospitality and warm welcome. It's more than made up for the cold weather. Very thankful for the hospitality.
Mr. Secretary General, today Islamic countries are facing with the problem of radicalism and extremism in the whole world, especially the Islamic countries, and Afghanistan is the front line. Could you please tell me what is the priority of the OIC for counter-terrorism and radicalism?
Well, radicalism is one of the more important challenges that the OIC faces, that we all face as Muslims, as societies, as civil society. We're all responsible for facing up to that phenomena of radicalism. It also relates to another challenge, which is sectarian violence. We also see violence based on sect within the Islamic world. And both of them feed and help the Islamophobic voices in the West, which is another challenge that we must face. I think for radicalism, for the radical groups, we have to understand the phenomena. We have to understand why such groups come to existence, why such groups come to being. And to do that, we must analyze the political context, the economic context, the social context, and the ideological, religious context of such groups. We also have to keep an eye on all those who may have penetrated such movements and use them for their own political agenda. Of course, most important is to deprive these movements from their claimed Islamic legitimacy. What they do, the violence they commit, the crimes they are involved in cannot be Islamic. It's anything but Islamic. It's as far from Islam as anything. We have to make sure that we ourselves are not misled by them and that the world does not think of them as Islamic movements. They are merely extreme movements and in some cases criminal movements. But to face up to them, it's not enough to think of security and military action. We have to understand all these contexts to be able to face up to the phenomena, to dismantle it, to defeat it. And this is exactly what we do in the OIC.
So now you just realize that what's the context of an ideological point of this extremist group for you? It's clear for you?
I'm telling you how we should approach this. Of course, some phenomena, some extreme voices have been with us for some time. They're not new, so countering them has been part and parcel of the work of the OIC.
So you have the strategy of countering with this radical group?
Yes, of
OIC.
Of course.
Could you please explain for me that clearly what's the strategy?
Well, first is to understand these phenomena. You know, I cannot defeat an enemy without understanding that enemy.
Till now, you don't understand.
No, you're asking me how.
Yes.
This is the strategy. It's not something we are starting now.
Yes, yes, yes.
But this is how we approach this. This is what we have, how we have approached this. This is how we approached this. I gave you 3 tenses, present and past participle. You have to understand the phenomena. To understand it, you have to look at its political component. You have to look at the social environment. You have to look at the economic conditions of those involved in. And you have to look at what Islamic sources they have leaned on to legitimize their action, to claim they are Muslims. And you also have to analyze who could be a beneficiary from this. If you look at ISIS, for example, in Iraq, there is a political context of Iraq, there is a political context of Syria, there is the political context of Palestine. There is also the social context of marginalization that Iraq has seen, of depriving certain segments of the society to be part of the political economic process. There is also a social context. We have young populations, and most of these young people live and feel a state of loss, disillusionment. They don't have enough jobs. They don't have a regular source of income. They lack the basic requirements of life. They are alienated. They don't find a meaning for their lives. So comes an extreme movement and brainwash them, suddenly make them feel they are important, they are on a mission, that their life makes sense, and they have a source of income. And then they are used as the fuel for this. So understanding these components will help us devise solutions and ways to confront them. Most important is to understand how they can claim to be Islamic. What interpretations are they using? What sources are they relying on? And then, based on that understanding, on that analysis, we can devise ways and means of confronting them. Now, confrontation is not simply security and military, it's also dialogue, it's also negotiation, it's also persuasion, it's also addressing the economic needs, taking account of the social deprivation, and also being able to address the political differences. So that's what we do in the OIC. That's what we have been doing.
You mentioned before about the source. Let me ask questions from here that all of the words, except of the Arab nation, they condemn that the Emirates, or also the Arab world, support financially this terroristic group. You, as a person who working in the OIC, accept this one, that the Arabs world are the support and financial supporter of this terroristic group?
Who is saying this?
All of the people condemn it, especially in Afghanistan. Some of the civilians said that the Arab world support financially these terroristic and radical groups.
Why would they support them? What benefit it is for the Arab states or the Arabs to support extreme organizations and extreme movements? What do they gain by supporting them?
Actually, I don't
They
know.
gain nothing. So it's impossible for anybody who is a Muslim, whether Arab or non-Arab, to support such movements, because nobody benefits. Actually, the most damage these movements do is to Islam itself. To associate Islam with terror, to associate Islam with violence, to associate Islam with being outmoded, that cannot live in today's world. It doesn't satisfy the requirements of modern life. So which Muslim will be involved in supporting a movement that will damage Islam? What political advantage does anybody or do any Arab states benefit from this? None. So I think these are claims that have no basis in truth. And you have to ask the people who say this what logic they have, what information
Let me share,
they have.
Mr. Secretary General, one logic that the civilian, especially in Afghanistan, also mentioned about this, is the penetration of the Arab in the region. So they support the terroristic group. Do you accept this one?
No, I don't think this makes sense, to be honest with you. If you're referring to the war against the struggle against the Soviets, that was not, there were some Arabs involved, of course. We all know this. They were all volunteers. They all worked and fought under Afghani Mujahideen leaders. And they were in a struggle that many Afghanis, many Arabs, many Muslims worldwide thought was legitimate at the time. As you remember, so the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. It was not, they were not here as tourists, they were here as an invaded force. And there was, I think, at that time, a legitimate cause to resist that occupation, like it is legitimate to resist any occupation, whether Soviet or any other country. So the Arabs who were involved then were involved in what everybody at the time agreed as being a legitimate struggle, and they all organized and fought under Mujahideen leadership at the time, under Afghani leadership.
And let me have the last question from this part as well.
But the question we should ask ourselves in an Afghani context is if it was legitimate to fight the Soviets, to resist the Soviets. When the Soviets withdrew, what was how could we say it was legitimate to fight among each other? The civil war continued, maybe more fiercely. You know, we are sitting now in Kabul now. Kabul was devastated more by different factions of Mujahideen than it was devastated by the Soviets. It was divided. It was ruled, every part of Kabul was the property of one group or the other. This is a question we have to ask ourselves. We had an opportunity. There was a sense of unity among Afghans, among those who supported Afghan struggle for liberating Afghanistan from the Soviet Union. But then what happened after that? This is what we should ask ourselves.
Okay.
But we're not here to discuss history. We are here to look at the future. We think Afghanistan now is at a crucial stage. It's a moment of hope.
Yes.
It's a point of optimism. We have a government of national unity. We have enlightened leadership. This is what we should be thinking of. This is what we should be doing, thinking of how to support this unity government, how to go forward. The history we leave to historians.